That one's full.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess as the late David Wright would say, after an introduction like that, I can hardly wait to hear what I'm about to say. But first, just a little more while John's setting up there, just a little bit more about fruit flies. Rob, where's Rob gone? You may be interested to know, or perhaps you do know, that the fruit fly was the first living organism to be fired into space. I was reading an article the other day. It was in 1947 in the nose cone of the B-2 rocket. It didn't record what useful information was obtained from that exercise, but I suspect it was more to do with rocket propulsion than it was eradication of fruit flies. But there we are. Now, you've heard a considerable amount of information about the Progeny test program and its importance to the industry. I'm certainly honoured to be a part of that program now in a coordinating role. Having been perhaps part of the problem for 20 years, it's nice to be able to perhaps be part of the solution in my latter years. The original objectives of the program, and they've changed slightly over the last couple of years, was to produce up to 400 progeny from a mix of young and some proven size, and to finish 60 to 70 steer progeny on pasture and 140 to 170 in feedlots, and that was to be for 3 consecutive joinings, 3 consecutive years, and we're now have that extended into a 4th consecutive year. The Board of Herefords Australia decided earlier this year that it should go with a 4th cohort, and maybe be looking at cohorts beyond that, given the importance of the program that's been discussed by previous speakers. The steers that are being finished on pasture, indeed, they've been diverted into feedlots. The vagaries of the climate, plus the coming online of Talimba as a net feed intake testing facility, the priorities have changed a little bit there, so we're not at this stage finishing steers on pasture. That could change in future cohorts, given the importance of the emerging pasture program that I think the OMLA speaker alluded to this morning. We're identifying sires, hopefully the progeny of which express superior carcass traits and meat quality, particularly for marbling, retail meat yield, and the daughters of which express superior meat maternal and fertility productivity traits. And as I said before, net feed intake is now also a very important trait of interest. If we get lucky, we might indeed identify 2 or 3 sires in the course of this program which are indeed world beaters for certain traits of importance, and ones which can take the breed forward in a big way in those traits. Rob's told you about the importance of collecting information for the calibration of and validation of existing and emerging genetic technologies, and our information is certainly being recorded and put into a data bank for that purpose. And we're also obtaining data for use in fine-tuning of Hereford breed plans. The traits that are being collected, in the main, those of you who are breed plan recording would be well familiar with the birth traits. The weaning traits, post-weaning, 400 and 600 day weights, the 600 days more to do with the females. Most of the steers are out of the system by the time that they would be normally collecting 600 day weights. The carcass scans for EMA, intramuscular fat, rib and rump fat, structure and temperament scores, net feed intake, and as I mentioned before, female productivity. All males and females, steers and females, are being scanned, as well as the steers are then going through chiller assessment. I think from the Armidale conference I did hear that one set of chiller assessment data actually measured in the chiller was equal to 10 live animal scans. Andrew might correct me on that, but I think that was the ratio that I heard mentioned. So that chiller assessment data is certainly very important, given the the relatively low number of cattle that we've got carcass information on. In the chiller, we're doing carcass weight, fat depth, EMA, OSMeat and MSA marble scores, pH, meat colour and fat colour. We're taking meat samples from each carcass, about a 300 or 400 gram sample from each carcass that's being taken at the chiller assessment stage. The actual surface that's being assessed by the MSA chiller assessors, and that's going to the meat science lab at the University of New England for further testing, shear force for tenderness, intramuscular fat, the actual intramuscular fat being measured in that sample for reference back to visual marbling, and also the calibration of the scanning equipment that's being used for live animal scans for IMF. And the meat science guys at UNE are doing a couple of other things there too. I think some cooking tests, more to do probably with their own science, but the things that we're particularly interested in are those couple of traits there in the meat science. DNA, we're taking every calf as having tail hairs removed. They're principally for parentage verification. We get these calves parentage verified as soon as possible after birth, so that we know that we're recording the information to the right sire. There's a reasonable failure rate, not a big one, but enough to say that any moves that your board makes to tighten up confirmed parentage is well worth taking, because it's amazing how these errors crop into the system. Later on in the calf's life, we're taking blood for high quality DNA extraction. That's going to the University of Queensland for that exercise, and it's being placed on record there, and will be used in genotyping each and every one of these animals in due course. The commercialisation and dissemination strategy has probably been covered pretty well by previous speakers, but all phenotypic data, that's the actual stuff you can see and feel and measure, is collected by the project, is being placed onto the Herefords Australia database. The DNA bank, as I said, will be available for calibration and validation of marker panels. And the full data set's being logged with the Animal Genetics and Breeding Unit's database for future incorporation into Hereford breed plan to produce marker-assisted EBVs. And sires identify the project as superior, of course, will be available for use by industry. And we look at control and ownership of the project Progeny. To obtain the maximum data from each progeny set, it's important for Herefords Australia to actually have ownership and control of these steer progeny. Then when we come to the female progeny, we ask our cooperators, we can't force them to do this, but we do ask our cooperators to retain those females as far as possible for female productivity measurements as they come into puberty and beyond. The steers are purchased from cooperators at around about that 9 to 10 months of age. A realistic market price is paid, plus a little bit for their trouble. And those steers then go into a backgrounding operation and grown out to feedlot entry weight. We try to get them to a minimum of 400, but preferably up around 450 kilos. And then, of course, off into the feedlot for anywhere from 100 to 120 days. On average, about 120 days feed that they're going on. As I said, the female progeny, they're retained in the ownership of the cooperator herds and assessed as far as possible for as breeders as time progresses. As you can well imagine, there's plenty of challenges and constraints to the successful outcome of the program. not the least of which is the sourcing and retaining of suitable cooperator herds. And I must say that we've had outstanding support from our cooperator herds. I think we've had 11 or 12 cooperator herds during the course of the program thus far, and on average we run about 8 cooperator herds per cohort. The success of AI programs is, of course, also vital to the thing. Our original estimates, and this was done on anecdotal evidence, where we hear, Herefords are highly fertile, and we hear AI programs producing 80 to 90% of conception rates before the backup bulls go in. Well, that's just not so with this type of program, and it hasn't been for any of the breeds that are involved in it. If we get 60 to 65% conception rate from the AI program, we're doing very well. On average, it's somewhere in the high 50s, 57 to 60%. As I say, that's common to all the breeds that are in this program. So for that reason, I guess if you design this thing all over again, you'd go with twice the number of cows and perhaps reduce the number of bulls slightly to get more effective progeny on the ground. The variability of seasons is another major consideration. When we get to talk about where we're at with each of our cohorts, I'll be able to tell you about how we have to change tack as seasons change, and we need to keep these cattle going forward. It's very important we keep them going forward all the time, so you've got to be able to look ahead a bit as to just what's in front of us in terms of feed availability. Changing market conditions, you're all very familiar with that. If you buy cattle in at a certain price, you'd like to think you can get them out the other end with a profit. Thus far, I think that this particular program has been able to do quite well in that regard, but there's always the risk of a market collapse. The complexity of budget estimates is another issue, that given that this was designed back in sort of 2008, 2009, looking ahead for all those years, and trying to do a budget estimate for this number of cohorts that many years down the track was somewhat of a daunting exercise. I'm pleased to say that the estimates that we put together back then are holding pretty well, and there's been no year that a budget has collapsed. We've run pretty much to budget or ahead of budget each year. The natural disasters, of course, in this country, drought, fire and flood, always with us. Animal health issues, particularly where the feedlot's concerned. We've heard so much about how Herefords simply don't perform health-wise in the feedlots. And we'll be hearing tomorrow how we can improve that situation, management techniques to do that, and I must say they definitely work. What you'll be hearing tomorrow, they definitely work. We've had no deaths in the feedlot from BRD-related causes. We have lost 2 animals in the feedlots thus far. In each case, it was a different feedlot involved, and in each case it was right at the very end of their feeding program for reasons which were not determined. They just decided they didn't want to be there anymore and rolled over and died. Perhaps they heard a whisper about what was in store for them, eh? But yes, our weaning programs, our vaccination programs have really contributed to these animals enjoying quite a good, healthy feedlot experience. The financial resources, look, this program, excluding the 4th cohort, it was nearly a $2 million budget, and half of that contributed by MLA. MLA's been just terrific in this. They're very understanding all the way through. As far as I know, John, prompt with their payments of their part of it. But for a program like this, as important as it is, there is that financial constraint. How much can the organisation stand? And that's a challenge for the board and John to work out. And the difficulty in collecting abattoir carcass data. We've had outstanding cooperation from the meatworks, it's TNR Murray Bridge and Casino, Northern New South Wales, and the cattle that we've put through there thus far, but taking the types of measurements that we need to take in jam chillers, and they jam these carcasses in chillers, you just can barely move between them. We nearly lost, not a carcass, but we nearly lost one of the meat workers in TNR last year, a carcass that he was taking the meat sample. He must have rocked it too much and the thing just crashed down right on top of him. I thought he was dead. There wasn't much movement there for a while. I just managed to get out of the road and two fellas came rushing in with a trolley, and I thought they were going to take him away on the trolley. But instead of that, they just lifted the carcass up and took that. Left the guy there. So that's what fine margins these meatworks work on, you see. The carcass was more important. So where do we go now from there? Future developments. Okay, maximum benefit, of course, as I said, would be derived from a rolling program. How much can the budget stand? And the Herefords Australia Board has taken the project to a fourth cohort, and the MLA has very much welcomed that. John and I attended a mid-term review, which was a pretty heavy and intense mid-term review back in April. The report came in that there were no issues, really no issues, were there, that were any of concern. They were happy with the way the program was going, the way it was being managed, and then we attended a further program with the MDC board to talk about the fourth cohort and cohorts beyond if they eventuate. And I think that you can look forward to continuing support from MLA and the MDC board in that regard. We've also, the program also presents the opportunity to work with other research projects. An agreement's been entered into with the MLA and the University of Adelaide for data collected in the feedlot phase through Wanderribee feedlot down there. For use by the university in methane emission research. Now, where we're up to with each cohort. Cohort number 1 was 685 cows. They were joined back in June of 2010. Those calves came along. June of 2010. I must explain we've got a southern and a northern. Part A and Part B to each cohort. Part A is an autumn joining program or a winter joining program in the deep south, and Part B is a spring joining program further north, central New South Wales and points above. So with the first cohort, the same 15 sires are used in the south and in the north. We joined those 685 cows. They produced 200 steers and 192 heifers, so we almost got our 400 minimum progeny there. We would have got them easily had not the 85 cow component of that 600. There was some issue with those cows, and I think we got 13 calves out of 85 cows in that particular corporator herd. Also in that first cohort, the effective progeny was reduced by 19 sets of twins. It was an incredibly big year for twins for some reason or other. And the data from those animals is not of any value to the program. Now, 127 steers, they were fed for 120 days and, at TNR Murray Bridge, and they were processed there in July and August. They were processed in 2 lots in July and August of 2012. So we lost one steer there, mortality rate of 0.8%. And the morbidity rate, the sickness through that program, it was a very, very cold, wet winter of 2012. it was a miserable time down there. I think that the morbidity rate was no worse than the feedlot's average. It was around somewhere like 4% of cattle had some sort of treatment for an ailment during that period. The balance of the steers, they were the August-September 2011 drop. They were backgrounded at Yalgoo, at Walker, and they were originally planned for grass finishing. Toowoomba, the research feedlot owned by the University of New England, came online later that year with its NFI testing equipment, and there was a very keen interest by the board in obtaining NFI data, and MLA was also encouraging the organisation, excuse me, quite strongly to utilise that facility. So the balance of those steers went through there. They were fed for 100 days, NFI tested, and they were killed at Casino in April of this year. Full chiller assessment data, meat science and NFI from both sets has been entered into the Herefords Australia and the AgBoo and breed plan databases. You'll have seen some of the effect of that coming through. Andrew Byrne will talk to you about that. On an across the breed basis, the effect has probably been quite minimal, but as far as the individual size in the program goes, I think the accuracies of their EBVs have tightened up, and some of them have moved around a bit, but I'll leave Andrew to talk to you about that. The heifers from that program are now of joining age, and they've been, some have been joined naturally and some have been AI'd to project size. Data collection from steer progeny has been completed right across the board in that first cohort, and all those results are currently in the number crunching stage, and they'll be released in the near future. We've heard a lot about the price differential in the feedlot industry for Hereford cattle. Some people are quite critical of the fact they say Herefords are being crucified. I know there was a thought at one stage, way back in one of the boards of the Hereford Society that I was associated with at the time. Those guys are not here to defend themselves, but they were convinced that there was a vendetta against Herefords and that the Herefords were being talked down so they could be bought more cheaply. The feedlots wanted them, they reckon, they just wanted them more cheaply. The information that I was getting out of the feedlots and the processors was quite different to that. I had John Keir from AMH who would come into my office, he'd put his data on the table and he'd say, look, we're not against Herefords. What we want is cattle that will perform to our market requirements. And he would show me his feedlot data, he'd say, look at this, we have to feed 3 times as many Herefords as we do Angus and Shorthorns to get the amount of marble score 2 into the box. He said, marble score 2 to us is all important. He said it's 5% of our production, it's 50% of our profit. That's why we're buying cattle that we know will marble. He said, in some Herefords we do know is marble, and those that do, that we know do, come from properties of origin that have got it in their herds. We'll buy their cattle and we'll pay the same price as we pay for the others. Now, I just want to share with you some information out of this. I haven't got a slide on this. I've just pulled it out before I left home to come down. The 194 carcasses that were chiller assessed from that first cohort. 68 of them, or 35%, were Ausmeat marble score 0. 118, or 61%, was Ausmeat marble score 1. And 8 of them, or 4%, was Ausmeat marble score 2. There's sufficient good news therein. You know, that to me is typical of the way the breed performs in the feedlot. But there is some good news in there, in that 118 marble score 1, with some selection pressure on IMF, I reckon you can move a lot of those into marble score 2. And you've got the tool to do it. Those bulls that were used in cohort 1 were 8 times the breed average for IMF. Our current IMF breed average is 0.1, I think, Andrew, from memory. These bulls that we used ranged from, there were 2 of them that were below, but only marginally below breed average, right up to 2.2, and they had an average IMF EBV of 0.8. So, you know, there's some work to do there, but from what I've seen, I certainly believe it can be done. On the health treatment side of it, 2 shots of Bacillus, all yard weaned, 2 shots of Bacillus, 2 pestig yard and a couple of 5-in-1. And as I say, no real issues with feedlot health. Then we move on to cohort 2. 12 new project size we used there, and a couple from the previous cohort. They were used as link size. They were joined to 604 cows, and they produced 180 steers and 163 heifers. 84 March-April 2012 drop steers went to the backgrounder in January of this year. 41 of them, maybe it was 43, came out in April. Yeah, 43 came out in April, and they went to Albury, 120 days, which will be due on first week in August. So they'll be killed first week in August. The balance, 41 steers, they were well behind in weight, and we've heard about the effect of environment and season. The other 41 steers came from a much harsher environment and season, and so they've been backgrounded for longer there, in fact going to the feedlot today. They're due in to Albury today. The balance of 96 steers, they were steers that were born in August and September of 2012. They went to backgrounding on the 15th of May. We sent them to Yelgoo. It was okay at that stage, but the season very quickly folded. A couple of cold spells, and really there was no grass available to keep them going forward. Adjustment anywhere else in New South Wales at that stage with reasonable feed quality, the type that was necessary to keep these going forward, just simply wasn't available. So the management committee took the decision to send them into Talimba early. They're at Talimba now on a grower ration. They're doing 1.45 kilos a day average on the grower ration. When they get up to 450 kilos, then we'll put them through the NFI testing program and feed them on for another 100 days. So they'll be killed around about early December. And the heifers from that cohort, they're still in the process of growing out in their respective cooperator herds. Cohort number 3, 13 new project size. They were joined to 862 cows. We're trying to crank these number of cows up, get more effective progeny on the ground. 465 cows calved March, April this year, and the balance they'll start calving next month. The data collection from those March, April calves, calving data is still in process. I haven't got all that in yet from the cooperator herds. And then cohort number 4, 28 bulls were nominated. 2 of those were from New Zealand. 10 bulls were selected, including one of the New Zealand bulls. 310 cows were AI'd in last month in June, and we've got another 400 to 600 to be AI'd in November. At this stage, I'd like to get another 150 to 200 cows for that November joining. So if anybody knows of a commercial herd, or have got a commercial herd running alongside your stud that would be available for that, please give me a call. Acknowledgements. There's quite a few organisations that put a lot into this, not the least of which, of course, is the MLA Donor Company. The Animal Genetics and Breeding Unit, always on tap to give us advice and help us out with the analysis. Southern Beef Technology Services, Andrew's travelled all over the countryside with me visiting cooperator herds and giving advice on how to go about collecting the data and what the data's really necessary. Thank you, Andrew. The project sire owners, we've heard about how important this is to the breed in general, These project sire owners pay $2,000 a bull to put a bull in here, and I think they deserve a good hearty round of applause. It's prepared to put their breeding on the line, and also to try and find something which will really contribute to the betterment of the breed across the board at their own expense. The cooperator herds, the majority of these are commercial herds. They're not accustomed to the degree of record keeping and data collection that is required in an intensive program like this, but as I say, they've all been excellent in the way that they've taken it on board and fulfilled their obligations under the terms of our agreement. The backgrounding properties, Barn Hill, can thoroughly recommend Barn Hill, one of the most professional operations that I've ever struck. That's just outside of Menengi in South Australia. Continual flow of information out there in their management of the cattle and the quality of their pastures, dry land, lucerne, is excellent. Yalgoo, same could be said there. Yalgoo fully committed to this program. Unfortunately, as I said, the feed ran out this year, but the Nivison family have been very, very good to us. TNR Murray Bridge, full access to their works. They welcome me there when these cattle are being killed. You can well imagine a fast-moving chain. They would normally not want people getting in the road on the kill floor, but it's very important that we get a correlation between ear tags and RFIDs. In case one or the other goes missing, we must keep full identification of these cattle all the time, and so they allow me on the kill chain to record this whilst the bodies are going through. Also in the chillers the next day with their chiller assessors to get that information and meat samples. Similarly with the Northern Rivers Cooperative, very, very good indeed. JBS, I think we'll have Cameron Hilton here later in the program. Cameron said to me, and I've had a meeting with him out there at Dinmore, anything they can do to help, they're only too happy to do so, and I'm sure that we'll be talking to Cameron more about processing of some of these future cohorts. Lee Pratt Meats, they bought the last lot of carcasses that went through, and were happy for us to get the data that we needed. And the feedlots, Wanderribee and Chilimba. As you can well imagine, small lots to big feedlots are really a nuisance, but these guys have welcomed us and done all that we've expected or required of them. That's it. That's where we're at. If we've got any questions, happy to.